Jack Reynolds, 40 and weathered by single parenthood, grips the steering wheel while his daughter Emily sleeps peacefully in the back seat. Flashing lights pierce the storm ahead. A car overturned, smoke and sparks bleeding into the night like wounds. Jack brakes hard, heart hammering against his ribs, rushing toward the wreck. A small boy crawls out, tears mixing with rain, trapped beside flames. Jack pulls him close, their eyes locking. Familiar, unsettling. Stay with us. This touching story uncovers a truth that changes everything. Jack carries the boy through sheets of rain that feel like ice against his skin, his carpenter's arms strong enough to shield the child from both weather and terror. The boy clutches Jack's shirt with desperate fingers, refusing to let go, even as emergency vehicles flood the scene with red and blue light that paints the darkness in urgent colors. Paramedics rush forward with practiced efficiency, their movements sharp and professional as they assess the situation. But when they try to take the boy from Jack's arms, small hands tighten like vices around fabric, and frightened whimpers become panicked cries that cut through the storm's noise. "You're safe now, buddy," Jack whispers, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. He wraps his own coat around the trembling child, feeling the bird-like heartbeat against his chest, the way small shoulders shake with more than just cold. "I've got you. Nobody's going to hurt you." Sirens scream their emergency song while headlights wash over the accident scene in waves, illuminating twisted metal and shattered glass that tells a story of impact and survival in fragments scattered across wet asphalt. Steam rises from the destroyed vehicle like ghosts escaping into the night air. A woman stumbles forward through the crowd of first responders, her rain-soaked hair plastered against her skull, panic written across features that time has changed but not erased. Claire. Jack's breath catches in recognition, the woman who had shared his bed and his dreams more than a decade ago, before life pulled them in different directions and left him to raise Emily alone. She drops to her knees beside them, gathering the boy into her arms with the desperate relief of a mother who thought she might never hold her child again. "Ethan, oh my God, I thought I lost you." Jack freezes as the name hits him like physical force. Ethan, her son. But as the boy turns in Claire's embrace, those green eyes, exactly the shade of Jack's own, exactly the shape he sees in the mirror every morning, lock onto his with recognition that goes deeper than gratitude. Claire looks up through rain and tears, her expression shifting from relief to shock as she recognizes the man who pulled her son from danger. "You? It can't be." Her voice carries the weight of years and secrets, of choices made in fear and regretted in silence. The storm outside seems insignificant compared to the tempest building inside Jack's chest as pieces fall into place with devastating clarity. The boy's age, the familiar features, the way he clings to Jack like he's coming home rather than meeting a stranger. He whispers back, his voice breaking around words that reshape everything he thought he knew about the past decade. "Claire, why didn't you tell me?" She pulls Ethan tighter against her chest, as if proximity could protect him from the conversation that has been waiting 10 years to happen. But she can't hold Jack's gaze, can't face the accusation and hurt and desperate hope that wore across his features in the emergency lights. Emily stirs in the car behind them, waking to flashing lights in her father's absence. But the adults remain frozen in their triangle of revelation. The rain continues its relentless assault, washing away the blood and glass, but unable to cleanse the weight of truth finally spoken in the darkness of a highway made dangerous by more than weather. Around them, paramedics work with professional detachment, unaware that they're witnessing more than an accident recovery. They're seeing the moment when lives that had been carefully separated by time and choice collide again with the force of destiny. 3 days later, Jack finds himself unable to shake the image of Ethan's eyes. The way they had searched his face with recognition that seemed to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to something deeper, more primal. He brings Emily with him to the hospital, her presence an anchor to the reality he understands while he navigates the one that has suddenly become foreign territory. The flowers in his hand feel inadequate, but the small wooden toy car he carved during sleepless nights carries weight that expensive gifts could never match. His fingers smoothed every edge, sanded every surface, poured love into grain and polish the way he had learned to express emotions that words could never contain. Ethan's face lights up at the sight of them, his smile transforming the sterile hospital room into something warm and welcoming. "You came, Shibari." The joy in his voice is uncomplicated, pure in the way that only children can manage when the adult world hasn't yet taught them to question miracles. Claire stiffens beside the hospital bed, her body language caught between gratitude for Jack's kindness and terror at the implications of his presence. She watches as he approaches slowly, giving Ethan space to accept or reject the attention, never pushing but always available. Emily and Ethan connect with the instant chemistry that children sometimes share, their laughter filling the room as they examine the toy car together, Emily explaining the different types of wood while Ethan traces the smooth curves with wonder. They whisper secrets across the space between visitor chairs and hospital bed, building friendship with the speed that only comes when souls recognize each other immediately. Claire finally speaks when the children are absorbed in their play, her voice barely above a whisper as she delivers the confession that has been building for a decade. "I was pregnant when we split. You were drowning in debt from the business failure, barely surviving the bankruptcy. I was scared. For me, for the baby, for what it would mean to tie my future to someone whose world was falling apart." Jack's jaw tightens as the words hit him, muscle memory of old pain mixed with fresh betrayal. His voice stays low, controlled, but carries the weight of years spent wondering what might have been different. "You had no right to decide for me, for him. I deserved to know. I deserved the chance to choose." The accusation hangs between them like a blade, sharp enough to cut through whatever tentative peace they might have been building. But before Claire can respond, before the conversation can escalate into the fight that has been brewing for 10 years, Ethan interrupts with the unconscious timing that children use to redirect adult storms. "Can you teach me how to make one?" he asks, holding up the toy car with reverence, his innocent eyes shining with hope that transcends the complicated emotions swirling around him. In that moment, he's simply a boy who wants to learn from someone he instinctively trusts. Jack's anger melts like ice touched by spring sunshine, replaced by something softer and infinitely more complex. The rage that had been building finds itself redirected, transformed into protective love for a child who had no part in the decisions that kept them apart. Over the following days, Jack visits regularly, showing Ethan how to sand wood with patient guidance, teaching him the difference between grain and knot, between pressure applied with purpose and force used carelessly. Emily becomes Ethan's enthusiastic cheerleader, celebrating every small success, turning learning into celebration. Claire watches from doorways and chairs, her expressions cycling between guilt and longing, between regret for choices made and fear of choices yet to come. She sees how naturally Jack fits into the role she denied him, how Ethan gravitates toward his father with instincts that biology and time couldn't erase. One evening, after tucking Emily into bed and sitting alone in his workshop, surrounded by the smell of cedar shavings and linseed oil, Jack admits to his daughter the weight that has been pressing on his chest like a stone. "I lost 10 years with him, Em. 10 years of bedtime stories and first days of school and scraped knees that I could have kissed better. I don't know how to forgive her for that. I don't know if I should." Emily, wise beyond her 11 years in the way that children of single parents often are, considers this with the gravity she brings to problems that matter. Maybe don't forgive for her dad. Maybe forgive for him. Maybe some things are bigger than being angry. Keep watching, because secrets can break a man, but love can rebuild him. The confrontation arrives like a summer thunderstorm, sudden, violent, and impossible to ignore. Claire's parents storm into the hospital room with the righteous fury of people who believe money and social position grant them the authority to reshape other people's lives according to their preferences. Her father, silver-haired and sharp-suited even in crisis, points an accusing finger at Jack like he's delivering a verdict from on high. "What right do you have to interfere in this family? You're nothing but a carpenter with calloused hands and debt collectors, completely unfit to be around a child who deserves better." Her mother, elegant and cold as winter marble, speaks with the kind of precision that comes from years of cutting people down with carefully chosen words. "Claire made the right choice, keeping Ethan away from your circumstances. We can provide him with opportunities, education, a future that doesn't involve sawdust and struggle. Jack remains calm in the face of their assault, understanding that losing his temper would only validate their assumptions about his character. His voice stays level, controlled, carrying the dignity that comes from knowing your own worth, regardless of other people's opinions. The only thing that matters here is what's best for Ethan, he says, looking directly at Claire rather than her parents. Not what's convenient, not what looks good to your country club friends, but what a boy needs from the people who are supposed to love him unconditionally. But Ethan overhears the heated conversation from his hospital bed, his young face crumpling as he processes words like unfit and nothing to offer, applied to the man who pulled him from a burning car and taught him to work with his hands. The joy that had been building between father and son since their reunion cracks under the weight of adult cruelty. That night, after her parents have left trailing threats about lawyers and custody battles, Claire finds herself alone with Jack in the hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like angry insects, casting harsh shadows that make everything feel stark and unforgiving. "I thought keeping him from you would protect him," she admits, her voice breaking around words she's never been brave enough to speak aloud. "I was terrified of being like my mother, dependent on someone who might leave, raising a child in poverty because I chose love over security." Jack's pain finally erupts, years of carefully controlled emotion breaking through the dam of patience and understanding he's maintained for Ethan's sake. "You stole a decade from me, Claire. From him. You made him grow up thinking his father didn't want him, and you made me live with the emptiness of not knowing he existed. How do I forgive that?" Tears stream down her face as she faces the full weight of her choices, the ripple effects that spread outward from that moment 10 years ago, when fear convinced her that protection required separation. I know, and I hate myself for it, but please don't hate him for my mistakes." Their conversation is interrupted by a small voice from the doorway. Ethan, who has climbed out of his hospital bed despite medical advice, who has come looking for the adults whose raised voices carried down the hallway like storm winds. "Will you leave like Grandpa says?" he asks Jack quietly, his green eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from learning that adults don't always keep their promises. "Or will you stay?" Jack drops to one knee, placing his hands on his son's shoulders with the gentle firmness that comes from understanding that this moment will echo through the rest of their relationship. "I will never leave you again, Ethan. No matter what anyone says, no matter what happens between the adults, you are my son and I will be here for you." Emily appears beside them, having followed the voices and the tension, her young face serious as she takes in the family drama unfolding around her newly discovered brother. She looks directly at Claire, speaking with the clarity that children bring to complicated situations. "He's not just your son anymore," she says simply. "He's my brother, and families don't give up on each other, even when it's hard." Jack faces the choice that will define the rest of their lives: cling to 10 years of justified anger and lose the chance to be Ethan's father, or step into the role that fate and circumstance have finally offered him, regardless of the pain that brought them to this moment. The hospital corridor holds its breath as past and future balance on the edge of a decision that can't be unmade. 6 weeks later, Ethan spends his first Saturday morning in Jack's workshop, where sawdust swirls in afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows like golden snow. The boy's concentration is absolute as Jack guides his small hands through the process of carving a simple wooden figure, teaching him to feel the grain, to work with the wood rather than against it. "See how the knife wants to go this direction?" Jack murmurs, his larger hands covering Ethan's, showing him the angle that will create a smooth cut rather than a rough gouge. Wood has memory, just like people. It remembers how it grew, and if you listen carefully, it will tell you what it wants to become. Emily sits at her own workbench nearby, sketching designs for the birdhouse she's planning to build, but her eyes keep drifting to her father and brother with satisfaction that goes deeper than simple happiness. The workshop that had been their quiet sanctuary has become something larger, a place where broken things get fixed and new connections take root. Laughter fills the room with warmth that no heater could provide, the sound bouncing off walls lined with tools and half-finished projects that represent the transformation of raw materials into something useful and beautiful. Ethan's giggle when his carving starts to resemble the dog he was aiming for is infectious, drawing smiles from both Emily and Jack. Claire begins stopping by, first awkwardly, claiming she needs to pick up Ethan but lingering in the doorway to watch the easy interaction between father and son. Then more naturally accepting offers of coffee, sitting at the small table where Jack usually eats lunch, gradually becoming part of the workshop's rhythm rather than an observer from outside. One evening, as winter darkness settles early over the neighborhood, Emily captures a moment that feels like the answer to prayers no one had been brave enough to voice. Her phone camera freezes the scene of Jack, Ethan, and Claire sharing hot cocoa by the small wood-burning stove, their faces illuminated by flames that dance with warmth and possibility. The photo shows more than 3 people drinking cocoa. It reveals a family that has found its way back to itself through circumstances that couldn't have been planned or predicted. Claire's smile carries less of the brittle perfection she once wore like armor, more of the genuine warmth that Jack fell in love with years ago. Ethan sits between them, secure in belonging that no longer requires explanation or justification. "I can't get back the years I lost with you," Jack tells Ethan later, as they clean up wood shavings and put away tools in the careful routine that marks the end of a productive day. "I can't change the birthdays I missed or the scraped knees I didn't kiss better, but I can promise you this, every day forward, I'll be here." His voice carries the weight of commitment that transcends legal documents or custody arrangements, the kind of promise that comes from understanding what it means to almost lose something precious before you even knew it existed. Ethan looks up at his father with eyes that mirror Jack's own, his small face serious as he processes words that carry the weight of forever. "That's all I ever wanted," he whispers. And in that simple statement lies the forgiveness that adults spend years trying to earn through complicated gestures and expensive gifts. Claire's eyes glisten as she watches them, finally meeting Jack's gaze without flinching away from the pain and hope and tentative trust she finds there. The conversation they still need to have about their own relationship waits in the space between them, but for now it's enough to know that they've found their way back to being Ethan's parents, regardless of what they might or might not become to each other. The workshop settles into evening quiet, tools arranged in their proper places, projects covered with care, the wood-burning stove crackling with contentment. Outside, the first snow of winter begins to fall, covering the world in clean whiteness that speaks of fresh starts and new possibilities. The storm that began on a dark highway has ended here, in a place filled with the warm light of family rediscovered, love that proves stronger than fear, and the simple miracle of second chances that arrive when we least expect them, but most desperately need them. If this touching story moved you, subscribe to our Heart Stories for more emotional tales of family, healing, and second chances.